Sick. All right. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Yeah,
Long time no chat.
yeah, it's been a long hot minute.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the last time I saw you, I think, was in 2012 or something like this.
Something like that, yeah, in Boston.
Yeah.
So,
And at that time, you were you were making like a bunch of cool, like cinematic sound designy dubstep stuff. And
right.
then I believe you might have been going to Berkeley at that time as well, right?
Yeah, I went for a minute for like about a year. I had to drop out though. It was like
Mm.
definitely an expensive school. Definitely didn't have the money for it, but I gave it a shot.
Oh, you
Yeah.
dropped out for financial reasons?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's
But
rough.
now you're a senior sound designer at Blizzard, which is fucking wild.
Yeah. Blows my mind too. Like I don't know how we got here, but I'm like, all right, let's keep it going. Yeah. So it was I think I may have mentioned this to you somewhere in a message, but that night, because I don't know if you remember, but you were playing that show down the street from where I was living in Boston, and um, like you like played my tune, and it was like an awesome time. Met a bunch of people, and then you introduced me to a mutual friend of ours, David.
Mm.
David Westbaum. And him and I got along, and afterwards we did some recording together and like hung out and whatever. And then just through the years I was helping him with like make flyers, and we kind of like exchanged techniques and things like that. And then he moved to the West Coast and started doing sound design work for a third party audio company. And so eventually I got sick of just being on the East Coast, being in Boston and like working crap jobs after having to drop out. And then like moved to the West Coast. A friend of mine needed a roommate and was just kind of like bumming around because I was just looking for something new at the time. And he was like, "Oh, we're hiring. You should try and get in with the company that I'm with." And I'm like, "All right, I'll give it a shot. I don't think I'm ready for something like that, but I'll try it." And so yeah, I applied, and then they like hired me, and I started at that third party audio company. They're called Hexany Audio.
Mm.
So I worked there for a few years, and then moved up to a senior position there. And then like it was sort of in the middle end of COVID when that was all happening, and like the game industry was like just booming, like huge, and studios are just hiring people left and right. And sort of through that, I was like, I don't think I'm ready to try and apply to like these other studios, to like a real game developer and whatever. And then like, but everyone who left Hexany went to like amazing jobs. They all went to like Bungie and Respawn and all these great positions. And I was like, man, I just don't think I'm ready for that. So I waited and waited, and then COVID ended, and all the jobs disappeared. Like no one was hiring, nothing. And then that's when I started to feel like I was ready to get into a AAA studio or something other than third party. And I was starting to feel like, yeah, I need something new. And I just happened to have found the Blizzard was hiring a senior sound designer, and I was like, I don't think I can be a senior sound designer at freaking Blizzard. That seems like that's crazy. But I'll try, because I just just want to try and see what the process is like and what their test is like and stuff like that. So I just kind of threw myself at it, and then they're like, yeah, we love your reel, we love your tests, let's do it. And I'm like, oh dang, that's crazy. So then I moved over, and I've been there for like 2 years, a little over 2 years now.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you've been mainly working on sound design for Heroes of Overwatch, or have you done other things too?
Yeah. So we have sort of like sub teams. We have one team that works on like events and maps and UI and stuff like that. And then we have one that does the cosmetics. So it's all the like, we call them POTGs. They're like in between matches. There's like little cinematic things, like emotes and another sort of more linear kind of work almost. And then we have the heroes team, who works on the heroes. I'm on the heroes team, but in between heroes, I help with the more linear stuff. And also when I'm working on heroes, like when there's downtime or whatever, we help out. So there, I mean, we all kind of help each other. It's not super strict, but basically, I do heroes as my main focus, and then like doing cosmetics and things is sort of my secondary thing that I help with.
And is the Overwatch team like one team and they have another team for probably like World of Warcraft and
Yeah,
a whole other team for, okay.
yeah.
And how many people are on the Overwatch sound design team in total, like including the linear workers and the hero team and everything like that?
I think there's maybe like 9
Oh,
sound
okay,
people.
not too many actually.
Yeah, not many.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's not too huge. I think even Diablo's team is around the same size,
Hmm.
something like that. Yeah. Hmm.
And if you could like pick which game to work on, or if you could pick what you did there, would you jump between like Overwatch and Diablo and World of Warcraft and all this stuff, or are you pretty? Do you prefer to go like super deep on one type of thing?
Well, so we're I don't have a choice. I'm on Overwatch, and then they're all very separate teams.
Mm,
There was a point where a lot of the audio, I think the audio was all coming from I think they called it Central Audio, and it was like everyone. It was one big sound team that worked on everything. And now at some point they split, and it split I think around the time Overwatch started. I don't know the
mm,
exact backstory on a lot of that, but yeah, I think it would be cool to work on some Diablo stuff, but there's a lot of like collaborative stuff that happens between us. So it's not, I don't know. I kind of like working on Overwatch just because it's like the aesthetic that they're looking for is sort of like stylized sci-fi, and I like doing stylized sci-fi. Um, but it would be kind of fun to do some like stylized magic stuff occasionally because Overwatch is pretty strict with its like sci-fi theme. So, but
mm,
yeah, no, I like working on Overwatch. It would be cool to work on Diablo though. Maybe a couple like weird fire abilities or something like that.
what do you mean when you say stylized?
Yeah. So, probably in recent years, there's been a shift to make things less literal, I suppose, is a good way to put it. Um, and I think it's a sort of a two-part thing. This is just my opinion and my sort of view on it. Um, some of it I think started with like the Harry Potter movies.
Hmm.
Because before that, magic sounds were always like noise whooshes and some thematic thing. If it's fire, it sounds like fire. If it's water, it sounds like water. And then like they'd
Mm,
sprinkle chimes on it to make it sound like magic. Just
hmm.
like some cheesy chime stuff. And then when the Harry Potter movies came out, it was like, oh, that sounds wild. Like there's these weird zippy sounds and all these like snappy, like cast sounds and weird textures. And I think for as far as like magic and stuff, that started shifting what magic sounds like and could sound like. And then movies like Transformers and stuff, of course, shifted like what sci-fi could sound like. And I think it really just sort of like started shifting to be something more like, yeah, more abstract sounding. But the biggest thing has been the sort of combination of the electronic music world and mixing in with things. And there's like, it's getting to a point where there's not a whole lot of difference between what's going on. Like just straight up, like a lot of my sounds are synthesized, and they're just straight up
Mm,
from listening to Noisia. Like it's
yeah,
not even.
yeah.
There's no. I don't even play games that much. I just listen to weird drum and bass, and then go like, oh, that could be electricity. So I'm gonna make
Mm,
that. Um, but a lot of people are getting into game audio from the electronic music world, and
mm,
a lot of sound designers are looking to the electronic music world for synthesis techniques and things like that. So,
mm.
um, since that's happening, it makes things a lot more synthesized and clean and yeah, just stylized. I guess that's kind of the main vocabulary for it.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. And so, like, what would be the difference between stylized sci-fi and stylized magic?
Yeah. It's getting to a point where there's not a huge difference in some ways. Like, even when I work on stuff, for me, I think that sci-fi tends to be a little more stiff or a little more like less noisy. Or it can be less noisy, because with magic, it's usually like conjuring energy and like whooshes and like cast sounds instead of like impacts and like gun and UI and like tech sounds. It's a lot softer and more organic in some way. But I tend to find that I end up using a lot of the same like bass sounds to ground each of them, whether it's like a snappy sound, or I don't think of it as like a snappy
When you
sci-fi
say
sound.
bass sounds, you mean like bass, BASE?
Yes, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I
okay, yeah.
need to clarify. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's kind of getting a little bit mixed between the two of them, I guess. But like, yeah, typically I would say Magic would be more noisy. It has more noise-based stuff. It's less like rigid, and it has more like ethereal tonal sounds and things usually. And it's a lot of them are based in elements too, like fire, water, that kind of thing, light magic or whatever it is. So yeah, it's typically the difference.
Right. So I'm interested, you said you work for a third party studio to begin with. How does that work? Is that kind of just like a company that takes like contracts from other companies like Blizzard or Bungie or whatever, and then hands it to you guys and kind of sort of like a middleman deal in a way?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It was, so they just kind of take work from all different places. So there's parts of the process that I loved and parts that was frustrating. The parts that I loved was that every week you'd be working on something like wildly different. Like one day it was like I worked on like a Sudoku mobile game and just making click sounds for the tiles or whatever. And then the next week we'd be working on League of Legends. It was always just like completely different. And I have always jokingly called the third party stuff like sound design boot camp, because it's just the turnaround time for stuff is fast. So you might have a few days to do something, you might have maybe a week to do something, but it's like you have to be fast. Your workflow has to be like clean. And I liked all that about it, but the one thing that was kind of frustrating about it was always sort of like make a sound, throw it over the fence, and then just like hope that they don't have feedback, and then they come back with feedback, and then you wouldn't know why you need to change the things that you're going to change, because you're not seeing it in game, you're not hearing it or playing it, you're just kind of going, okay, less transients on that ability, and then you send it back, and then come back with more, and it's this back and forth like tennis thing. And I was like, there's no connection to what's being worked on, and there's not a lot of ownership, because in the end you give it to them and then they can alter it or do whatever they want with it, and that's it. You just move on to the next Sudoku game or whatever. So that part got a little frustrating after a while. But as far as, because I build my own sound library, it was great for that, because it's like every week I'm working on something new. I'd come home, oh, I need fire magic. Okay, make a bunch of fire source, go in, test it. Does it work? No, make more. And you just like very quickly build out a library that way. So yeah, it's a really good way to get into the industry, I think. And it's really good like training for things, because now all of the workflow speed and stuff has been super helpful now, because it's just like we have so much more time to work on stuff, and to me it seems like I have a lot of time just because of how fast we had to work at Hexany.
Yeah, I've had this experience before as well. I've done like a couple of really small game jobs. Like I did one for Ubisoft, and I did one for a game called Sea of Stars, and
nice.
and I did this film called Mum and Dad, which has Nicolas Cage and Selma Blair in it. I like
Yeah.
scored that whole thing.
That's awesome.
And yeah, the turnaround times are insane. It's like for the Mum and Dad film, now throwing like a new scene at me every day. And now like, we need this scene scored by the end of the day, basically.
Yeah.
And I was also on tour during that time.
Oh my
So
God.
during the day, I was just like working on my laptop in the van, and then getting to the venue, and then just sending him shit, and then playing the show, and then going straight back to that. It was a lot of work.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But yeah, in general, I've found with that kind of stuff, the turnaround time is really quick. I did some stuff through a third party company thing for 10 cent at one point as well. Just some like random games. Like I think I did one for Honor of Kings.
we worked on that a lot.
You worked on that too?
Yeah. We worked with Tencent and NetEase a lot at Hexany. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that stuff was also the same. It's like, here's the thing, we need 3 minutes of music by tomorrow. It's like, okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, the turnaround times are crazy. Do you think that's a good or a bad thing?
I think that it's important to have enough time to try stuff and develop it. But I think also it may be kind of a generalization, but a lot of creatives will sit and like tinker with something until it's not cool anymore. So it isn't. I have found personally in my workflow, and I actually practice this on the weekends and stuff, where I'll sit down and be like, all right, I have half an hour. I have this like minute-long cinematic I pulled from YouTube or whatever. I'm going to get as much done as I can, and I don't have time to like get into the details of it. I just need to get as much done, and I still practice that, and I tend to find that when I'm under time constraints, I like the stuff that I come up with almost, because it's less technical, and when I'm like making source and making library stuff, I get super technical with it. But it's really nice to just kind of like paint with bigger broad strokes and just like get stuff down, and it's more of a feel thing. And I tend to like what's there more than if I were to sit there and like pick at it. So yeah, like I don't know. It's tricky because it's like third party. Being able to work quick and get stuff done is nice, but it would be nice if there's a little more like, hey, do you guys need another week? Or like, I feel like I don't know how things are set up on between like the management and NetEase or whatever, but it'd be nice if we could get brought in earlier in the process so we could have like an extra week to like test out some stuff or go record new material or synthesize new stuff. But you just don't. It's like whatever's in your library is all you got. Just buckle up and get it done. So I think there's some in between there where there's a better, healthier time frame.
Yeah, there's this thing called Parkinson's law, which says that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. And
yeah,
I think that's very true. Like, if you give me 3 days to make a song, I'll make a song in 3 days. But if you give me half an hour to make a song, I'll make a song in half an hour.
Right.
The quality may vary, obviously, but it's like however long you get given is how long it's going to take usually. So maybe that's part of why they do this.
Yeah, for sure.
In terms of building your own library out, like you said, you would often just make things and that would go into your library. If you then take something that you've made from your own library and use it in Overwatch, is that no longer in your library anymore? Like, is that Blizzard owns that now, or is that something that you could potentially reuse the source material from for something else?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't. I think the basic understanding is if I use something in the game, then it is Overwatch, or it is Blizzard's property. I don't know how far that would get enforced, because it's like, is this layer theirs, or is the sound that's being used in the game theirs, or it kind of gets down. And I've thought about that too, where I'm like, I don't really know where that line necessarily is. And also, like, okay, if you own that one file, I have the synth patch to go make more, because I save like all my presets, I save all my sessions and everything. So it's like, so do you own my synth patch too? Like, it gets into a weird place where it's like, I think in the end, if I had to guess, it would be like they owned the end sound that ended up getting used in the game.
Like the compiled
I
version
would
with all
guess.
of
Like
yeah.
if it really came down to it, it might be something like that, or maybe like the source that's in the session. So maybe that would be a part of
Like
it too.
just a little chunk of like the mud pie that you used or
Right?
something
Yeah.
is yeah. Yeah, that would be hard to enforce. Maybe at some point with like, I don't know, AI or something, they could enforce that harder. I've always thought that if AI gets good enough, the copyright strikes are going to get crazy.
Yeah.
If it's able to just like fully FFT, like pull apart every layer of something and be like,
Right.
whoop, that little chop came from this thing. But it
Yeah.
would get so complicated with like splice samples and all this kind of stuff. You'd probably get like, yeah, seems
Yeah.
like at this point in time, an impossible problem to solve.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why you mentioned that like you were at this third party company and then you saw this job at Blizzard, but you didn't feel like you're ready. What was it that made you feel like you weren't ready?
Um. So I knew I didn't have a lot of implementation knowledge. Like it was going to be my weakness. We didn't do.
Implementation as in like Fmod type stuff or
Yeah, like adding. It's why we use Wise, and then
mm,
putting stuff into Wise, and then putting that into the game engine. um. So it was kind of like any of that knowledge I didn't have, and we did very little implementation at the designers. We had technical sound designers at Hexany, so
mm,
they did any implementation projects they did. But when it came to us, it was always just like we'd give it to them and they'd implement it. So we're just very hands off with the implementation. And so I was my thought process was, okay, if I don't know how to implement stuff, then I have to be really good and really solid with my design work, so I don't have to
mm,
worry about my design work. I just have to worry about learning the implementation when I get to wherever I'm going. So it was like basically it was building out my library, so I had every sound that I would ever really need. And that was part of it. And another part of it was like if we got new projects in, I might struggle with one where I was like, I don't know how to make the sound. I don't know, I don't have an idea for it. I don't know what I would pull from my library. And so I wanted to wait until I got to a point where I didn't have to question that at all. And I always knew that I had something in my library to at least manipulate or like change into something I needed.
mm,
And then there was a point where I noticed that I wasn't getting hung up on projects, and I was just kind of like going through them. And I was like, okay, I think I'm good for it now. I want to focus on the implementation stuff eventually once I get in. So that's kind of how I felt about it, where I was like, I need to be good so that I can learn the systems when I get in there. And then honestly, it was a really good idea. I'm glad that I waited because that's exactly what it was. Like when I worked on my first hero, the actual design work was relatively easy. It was just like learning the systems, getting hung up on bugs, chasing bugs and trying to solve them and knowing who to talk to fix this thing, and like the whole office, workflow is a very different situation. So
mm.
yeah, it was a good idea in the end.
And what is the workflow like with Wise? Are you kind of sitting there, they give you a hero, and then they give you a bunch of like either video snippets or they give you like a program that runs in Wise so that you can throw sound into there and then press a button to see if like when the hero does the thing that the sound makes sense, or like what's the workflow like there?
So they when we're working on a hero, the hero designers get like a crude a crude version of the hero in first. Like they'll use assets from the game and just piece this like thing together that work functions. And then so we have the game that we can test with it. And so yeah, you throw your stuff in Wise, and then Wise is connected to our game engine. And then every time I go to work on the game, I basically build a local copy of the game, and then I work on it locally. So yeah, you throw your stuff in Wise. Wise put or set. builds it into the game engine, and then the game engine is where you hook it up to like the script that is making the hero do whatever it does, the ability or whatever. And then so yeah, that's all hooked up that way, and then you can test it like in real time while you're making tweaks and stuff like that. Um, yeah. Did that
Interesting.
answer your
So it's like,
question? I don't know if I answered your question.
yeah, I think so. So it's like, it's you basically having to learn like a little bit about like how running code and building code works. Like you just said, you had to build a local copy of the game, so they just give you all the source files for Overwatch, and you literally build your own version of Overwatch with this new character in it that you can then like throw sounds into, whatever, some sampler in Wise or something, and then
Mhm.
whenever this button press happens, it triggers like that ability on that character and that sound that you just threw in at the same time. Is that basically the workflow?
Yeah, the code. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on, sort of in the back end that I don't see or know. Like when things are building, it's using like I believe it's a called like Perforce, but it's different on our system than it is on others. From what I've understood, it's very much like hidden in the back. It just works, and you just push a button in, and it does its thing. Um, so I don't know the coding and all the deep stuff is more what engineers do, and for me it's literally just like put stuff in Wise, make it work the way I want it to work, send it to our game engine, and then the game engine has like a node based system that's sort of like this node will play this thing when this triggers it, kind of a situation. Like in Unreal Engine, it's called Blueprints.
Hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but like um, it's a different version of that essentially, and so you can go in and like move stuff around, and there's some like logic and data flow going on between all these nodes and things, and you can like change them. So there's some amount of like technical knowledge that's needed for that,
Hmm.
but typically it's pretty light when it comes to the stuff. But I've also talked to other designers from other developers, and some of them will like make sounds, put it in Wise, and then give it to the game designer and go like it's ready to be implemented, and they don't touch the game engine at all.
Hmm.
So I think each developer kind of has their own workflow. But in terms of from what I know, in certain teams, this is pretty common to be in there messing with the script and stuff a bit.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And when you finally feel like you're done and you're like, all right, this sounds good. The characters, like when it moves, it all feels good. Do you just send back the assets, like the audio, or do you send back like the audio plus all the shit you did in Wise and whatever
Yep.
script editing you did?
Yeah.
You send it all back.
Yeah, it all goes back. So like as soon as you touch anything, it like checks it out essentially so that no one else can mess with it. So yeah, you check out the asset, whatever it is that you're messing with, on your local machine, and then no one else can touch it. And then when you're done messing with it, you send it through, and then it builds it into the engine. And then, like if I put a new sound in, and I want to talk to the hero designer and be like, hey, let me know what you think of the sound. I'll build it, or I'll submit the sound and whatever, and I'll hit them up and be like, pull latest, meaning like pull the latest data. Usually takes like a few minutes, and then you can click a button, it pulls the latest data, and then it like brings my changes in, and then he can listen to them in real time.
And is this all just through like GitHub or something, or?
I have no idea how all that's so like above my head. Like I have no idea. It's magic to me. I hit send, and then I'm just like cross my fingers because I don't know where it goes or how it works. It
Yeah.
gets messed up occasionally, but yeah.
Yeah, it's more involved than I thought it would be. I thought it would just be like they send you videos, you like do the thing over the video of the action of the person doing the thing, the hero doing the thing, and then just send the sound back. But
Yeah,
sounds
that's
like it's
kind
a
of
lot.
that's sort of the third party thing where they send you videos and you design to them and then you send it back. But with this, it's like it's pretty involved. I know a few people who worked at Bungie on not Marathon, well on Marathon too, but on Marathon and on Destiny.
Halo? Oh, okay.
Destiny, yeah. And I think they have a similar involvement where you have to be like in debugging stuff and in the engine.
What is the debugging stuff that you have to take care of in the engine?
So, like, let me try to think of an example. Like, the I'll come in someday and a sound won't be playing. So, a bug will be that we consider that like a bug. So
Hmm.
then you have to go and look and find like, well, where does the sound live? Is it just not playing? Is it, because we'll have like a sound debugger and it'll play every sound that's playing in the game and you can watch all the sounds being played. So then you'll, go do the ability and then, um, if you don't see it, that means it's just not playing. It's unhooked somewhere. So then you have to go and find where it's hooked up and whatnot. Excuse me. Um, so you have to find like where it's hooked up. Is it a wise problem? Is it an engine problem? Is it like what what's going on? If it is playing, but it's not playing sound, then it's like maybe some sort of build error. You kind of have to like figure out like is it in script what happened, and sometimes like if the nodes I was talking about, we have our sounds will live in those nodes, and sometimes but we're trying to do it less now, but that we'll share a node with like VFX or animation in this node, and if they decide to like change something in on the tracks that's in this thing, then or they decide to get rid of it because they have a new animation or new VFX, sometimes it'll just completely stomp our audio, and so that'll be a bug, and then I have to go in and be like, hey, you know, this thing got deleted, got to make a new one or replace it or whatever. So that's kind of an example. Sometimes it's like sounds will be playing in a weird way and I don't know, and I'll just have to hit up like a technical sound designer and be like, I don't get this. Tell me why this is playing on the projectile and not on the hero. Like that's weird. And there might be like a weird ownership thing where it's playing on the wrong script or is set up to be in first person versus third person, or something like that that I just missed and they need to like check it out. Sometimes it's bigger than that. Sometimes we send it to engineering because it's just like the engine's broken some way and it needs to be fixed. So
Mm.
yeah, I guess there's
Yeah,
a lot of different things.
it's a lot more involved than anything I've ever done for sure. I've never messed with Wise or Fmod or anything like that. I understand like the concept generally of
Yeah.
like why they exist, but yeah, I've never messed with them at all. I feel like maybe I'll mess with them at some point if I ever get into this stuff. I always think like, oh man, I need a retirement plan, like
Yeah.
because obviously you can't just tour forever. It's too hard on your body and it's stressful. And
Yeah,
so I've always thought, yeah, getting into like game or film or something like that could be a solid retirement plan.
definitely. Yeah, no, it's pretty involved. It's funny because we it used to take about like 5 months or something like that to build a hero and make one.
Mm,
And when I was at Hexany, I would hit up friends who worked for game developers. I'm like, you know, we used to do a whole line, a skin line for like a League of Legends character or something in a week. Why does
mm,
it take 5 months to make sounds? It just doesn't make sense to me. Like I don't understand why. And a lot of them didn't always have the best answer, or it was always kind of confusing to me. And then when I got in and I was like going through the whole flow of things, I was like, oh, I totally understand why this takes so long. And I spent some time trying to be able to articulate why. And it's it's the implementation and the workflow and stuff. Like things are constantly changing with the hero. Um, so it's like, you'll put a sound in and then next week they're like, oh, it's not going to be a laser gun. It's going to be a ballistic, cannon. And it's like, okay, well now I have to make a new sound. And then they'll
mm,
go in and be like, well, gameplay, this doesn't read as threatening enough. We need it to be more like this. And then you make a tweak and all these things. But while it's being developed and morph and change into these different things, there's also bugs coming up on a regular basis. And then on top of that, you also have to do some side, cosmetics or something on the side. So it's like it's not just designing sounds for a finished product. You're
mm.
in the middle of like doing all this stuff. So yeah, it takes a while to get through process. We recently sped up our whole workflow, and now we're trying to get a hero down every 3 months instead of 5. So I don't know. It doesn't really change my workflow, or it doesn't worry me too much. But it's interesting because it's like it's a lot of work that goes into stuff, and the actual design work is a very small part of it.
Right. So it's like 10% designing sounds, 90% implementation.
Yeah.
Damn.
Implementation and just like chasing
You
bugs.
would think that they would just have like a team whose like specialty is just that, right? Oh, but I guess you kind of need it yourself because you need to see in real time, right? Like how this sound is going to behave or whatever.
Yeah. Well, because it's like, even if I have to get help with something technical, I'll hit someone up, but I don't know when they're going to get back to me. Like, I don't know what their schedule looks like. I don't know what they're doing, because we have a couple people who work remote, so it's not like I can just run to their desk and like be like, hey, can you help me with this or whatever. So it's it's kind of, I'm glad that we are so involved, because it means that I can then go fix things and I don't have to wait for someone to implement stuff for me. But yeah,
do you work remote as well, or are you in the office?
We're hybrid. So Mondays and Fridays we work remote from home, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday we work in office.
Okay, and the office is in LA as well, I guess.
Yeah, it's in Irvine, so it's sort of southeast of LA. But yeah, I
Nice.
like it a lot. I like the hybrid working. It's really nice.
Yeah, it is important, I think, when you're working on something with somebody else, to be in the same room as them every now and then.
Yeah.
I see this a lot with collabs. It's like I'll start a lot of collabs over Discord and they just never get finished because I'm never in the same room as the other person. But if I ever am in the same room as that person, we're like, oh, we should work on that collab and like actually get stuff done.
Yeah.
But then again, with electronic music, there's really like no time limit on when anything has to be done. It's just like make it if you feel like it.
Right.
Yeah, and there's no like real upfront incentive of money to like to do it either.
Yeah.
If somebody comes back to you and says like, "Oh, this gun is not threatening enough," what does that even mean? And like, how do you even address that? Because what is threatening in an audio sense?
Yeah, it's. I think one of the biggest challenges is the vocabulary that we use, because there isn't like a set way to describe certain things. Like at Hexany, we had a term called ruckles. Ruckles, and it's just like a vibrating sort of bumpy, beady, like an alligator growl. It's like that vibrating sound. And so it was a very normal part of our vocabulary there. And then I came to Blizzard. I was like, oh, I love the ruckles on that. And they're just like, and I don't know. That was my first, audio job. So I thought maybe that was like an industry term or something. But yeah, so like it's tricky because, the way we talk about audio is different too. Like, the transient needs to poke a little harder, it needs to hit a little harder. And then, a concept artist isn't going to be like talking about transients. They're just going to be like, it needs to be meaner. True. Okay. So you have to sort of translate what they're saying to the audio language. But typically, like, a good example is the water hero I worked on. Water, it's tricky to get water to sound threatening because it's just not a threatening thing, and also to keep it sounding clean, because I don't want to have noisy sounds, and water, when it is aggressive, is noisy. So it was like tricky to work with that and try and make it sound clean and concise and all that, while still trying to make it sound more and more threatening and aggressive. So I leaned on some like synth sounds to give it more of an energy sound, and added some of that to it. I made the transients nice and punchy, and then I did start layering in more like washy, kind of like aggressive, like modulating. They just modulate a lot faster kind of sounds, and that helped give it a little bit more like energy and motion, and that kind of helped with it. There were a couple other little things I did, like, because we will often make an enemy version of a sound and a friendly version of the sound, just because if something is damaging, the enemy needs to hear that in the game for gameplay, but the friendly doesn't need to know if something is damaging because they're on your side. And if they hear it the same way the enemy does, then the game just gets more and more cluttered with sound. So on like an enemy version, I put like a hissing, sort of like boiling, sizzling sound on it, so it sounded like it was hot. This is not. Also, when you're facing an enemy, all of their abilities and stuff are red, so it looks threatening versus the blue that you see. So having red water that's hissing, like it's boiling, just makes sense. But yeah, like so that's just one example. But typically, like if you're working on something sci-fi or whatever, you can just make it more distorted or just add more modulation to things to make it sound more aggressive. Typically,
It almost seems like it would be a reasonable and legitimate job to employ someone to just be a translator between like the creatives and the sound designers. Like you have this one guy or two people or something that like both sides interface with.
Right.
So one side can be like, oh, this is like it needs to be more threatening or whatever, and then they can like translate or maybe just agree on like a taxonomy of words that everyone, because I had that same issue with every game thing I've worked on and with every film thing I've worked on. It's always like some people telling me that like it needs to be faster when actually they just mean louder, or louder when they mean
well, we got that a lot in the third party. When I was working at the third party audio place, Hexany, because we get feedback that was like, I mean, I don't even think I'm joking when I say this. I think this actually happened, but someone was like, it doesn't sound purple enough. Like, it's not. And we're like, I don't know.
It's like not everyone has the same synesthesia that you do.
Right, yeah. Or we would get sheets and they would describe the theme of the skin that we were working on or whatever. And it would be so like abstract and weird. And then in the end, some of them we would get together and be like, all right, let's try to decode like what they're talking about here. And then in the end we were like, oh, they want electricity and they want it to sound kind of wet and zappy. Okay, cool. Everyone back to the rooms and just work on it. But sometimes when you're not involved in it, you just kind of like sling feelings around and stuff, and you have to like translate.
Right. What is the difference between a senior and a junior sound designer?
So, from my understanding, there's less expectations, I think, maybe for a junior, or even mid-level. Every developer has different hierarchy. Like some of them have silly names for different things. I think some of it too, it has to do with like the salary. I think some of it is like, we don't have to check in on you. We don't have to like give you feedback. You just get it right the first time. How reliable are you? Your output? How much do you help other teams? How much are you helping management in certain ways? Because there's a lot of like things that pop up where they're like, hey, we're doing this emote. We're gonna put it in. It's gonna be coming in hot. We need someone to take care of it. And then it's like, a senior you would expect to be able to like knock it out super quick and reliably, and maybe not a junior. You wouldn't necessarily expect that from them. So I think there's expectations and things. And then some of it I also think is just strictly a salary thing, because they can't have two people with the same, and this is just my theory on this, is I don't have any evidence of this, but I feel like they can't have two people with the same title making vastly different amounts of money, so they'll move someone up to like senior 2 and that kind of a thing. So there's a lot of like in between titles sometimes. I've heard other places they'll be like master sound wizard or whatever, and they have weird titles at other places, but I think it's really just for pay reasons potentially.
It's kind of much like a video game, right? It's like you go sort of through the ranks, you get to senior 2 or like distinguished master sound designer.
Yeah, exactly.
What were Blizzard's tests like? You said you had to take some like tests to go there and you tested well. Like what is that process like?
Yeah. It was pretty typical of from what I've done. I've tested for a bunch of places. Like when I was trying to get in, I tested at Bungie, I think, way early on, and I tested for Riot. But typically, it's like sometimes there's like an interview just to see like if you're a legit human, I think. And then they're like, yeah, we like your reel, we'll test you. So then they send you a test, which is usually like clips from the game. Sometimes it's like in-game abilities. Sometimes it's like little cinematic stuff. It depends on what they want. There was for Bungie, they had like a written script. This was an interesting one that was actually kind of fun. But they had like a script that they'd send you, and you had to design sounds to it. No visuals. It's strictly just like designing sounds to just words. But yeah, Blizzard was pretty straightforward. It was just like some videos from in the game, some cinematic stuff from the game, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. There's like I don't know, like 7 or 8 different things, and then you get like a week or so. You get a week to design everything for it, and then they interview after. I actually got COVID the first time. The interview before my tests, and I just started because at Hexany I think they gave us a week off to kind of recover from things, and I had just started my week. In my first interview, was just starting to feel the effects of it.
Oh no.
Yeah, and they're like, so we're going to test you. We get a week. Do you want to start this week, or do you want to start like some other time? And so my thing was like, well, do I risk it and say this week because I have the week off from work, or do I wait until I'm healthy? Because I don't know how COVID's going to affect me. I've heard some people be like, oh, I had a sneeze for a week and that was it. And then other people are just like on their deathbed for, 5 days. So I was like, I was like, I'll risk it because I don't want to be working a full-time sound design job and then come home and do more sound design. So luckily I only had one day where it was like really affecting me, but all the other days it was just, I felt like crap, but I could at least sit at my desk. And yeah, so I did my tests while I was dealing with COVID. And then after that, I had like 2 or 3, I think 3 interviews after that. And then they decided after that.
Yeah. And what is, I know I hear a lot of sound designers say like you need to have reels to submit to companies to like just show them kind of like what you do. What would your recommendation be if I decided today I want to become a sound designer? Like what do you think would be like the most, I don't know, the best strategy to go from like where I am now as like someone who knows how to do sound design, but I'm not really a sound designer.
Yeah.
To like to a sound design job at Blizzard or something like this.
Yeah. I'm surprised by how many people that don't have reels. Like a lot of, because I try to mentor people, either people hit me up on LinkedIn or I'll go, through Discord and into sound design servers and help out when people have questions and whatever. And like the first thing I'll ask is like, oh, how's your reel? What does your reel look like? Let me see your reel. And they'll be like, oh, I don't have one. I'm like, oh, well, then you're not even going to be considered. Like you have to have a reel. Like I can't express enough. There's no way you're getting a position without us seeing your work. So that's the first thing. But
and what should the reel include?
Yeah. So what I have been, it shouldn't be more than a maximum of 2 minutes long. Like it should be pretty short and punchy. The one thing that I suggest is make a reel for the game you're trying to apply to. So if you're trying to get into Overwatch, like pack that reel full of sci-fi stuff, or just Overwatch clips even, or Overwatch adjacent like Apex Legends, or something that's similar, because that gives us context and we can go, oh, that fits into our thing. But if we get a reel and it's full of like magic and I don't know, like Foley military stuff and like cutesy anime stuff, then it's like I don't, even if it sounds awesome, we don't know what you could do for our game.
Mm.
So I always suggest trying to make a reel for each, like, unless you want to work on a sci-fi game and you're like, I'm only working on a sci-fi game, then just make your sci-fi reel and then that's it. But if you're okay with trying to get into a game that's magic or a military game, make a reel for each of those genres and then apply to each one. And then also have, post them on YouTube so that, because sometimes they'll go look you up and be like, well, what else does he do? Or is there anything else? And then they'll be like, oh, he does all this other stuff. That's awesome.
Mm.
So, yeah, having focused reels is important. Showing stuff that is cinematic and also like in-game stuff. Like you'll find a lot of videos of people doing like showcases of guns from games or a showcase of abilities in games. Like you can search on YouTube and there's like tons of pages that just get captures of an isolated ability, and just designing to that helps us understand what you would design for something that's in the game. And then also doing linear stuff just to see, like, because with linear work you can just kind of go wild and you don't have to be too specific about how things read and whatever. So it's like, well, what is that, what does your craziness sound like when you're just kind of designing whatever you want? So yeah, having a mix of those two things I think is really good. But just keeping the game in mind that you're applying to, and knowing
Mm.
that the people on the other side have to decide, if you're right based on this thing that you're showing them.
Right. And is it a fairly competitive industry? Like, is there a lot of people applying to these jobs?
Yeah, tons.
Yeah.
And right now it's a really rough time because after the COVID bubble bursts, like all of these studios are just cutting back and cutting back, and there's just been massive layoffs. And there was like a year or so where it was just like everyone was having layoffs, and then afterwards we're like, oh, everything's fine, we're going to get back to normal, and it just didn't. There's still layoffs to this day, and it's like very successful games. Like the one of the biggest shocks recently was the Battlefield. It like released, everyone loved it, did really well, and they just had a massive layoff. And it's like, how does that game have a layoff? Like it makes sense if a game didn't do well or had a bad release or something, and that sucks. But it's also like, that's the risk that comes with it. But
Or maybe it's because the game was finished and they're like, we don't need all the sound designers anymore. We have
yeah,
all the sounds. So
right.
could be that.
It's crazy. It's hard to say, but like during COVID and stuff, a lot of these bigger companies started absorbing all these other companies. So like PlayStation came in and bought out like all these different studios and stuff. So it just became that thing. And now it's it's a different atmosphere for sure. It's risky. Yeah.
True. What's your thoughts on AI taking sound design jobs? Because you got these things like Suno and 11 Labs and Udio and these things that are able to like generate both songs and sound effects. Regardless of how you feel about the ethics of all that, how do you feel about like job security in that sense?
Right now it seems like things are fine. I think there hasn't been any talks about trying to integrate anything like that. I think the thing that most creative people that I've talked with, who would be willing to integrate some of that into our workflow, is there's a lot of mundane stuff. Like the implementation stuff is like, make a container and put the sounds in the container, naming convention, name this, attach it to an event. Like there's certain things that it's just like when you have to do it over and over and over again, it pulls you away from the creative process. There's certain things like that I think that would be really nice to have sort of automated in some way and just like have the AI take care of that for you. That's my personal take, but there hasn't been a ton of talks about it. It's sort of just like, I don't think that they're willing to mess with creative people's thing yet. I think there'd probably be enough of a backlash that maybe they wouldn't want to do that. But I'm not sure. I don't know too much about like what their plans are or whatever. But we haven't. I don't interface with AI stuff on my daily basis. I don't know of anyone else on the team who does. And the general sense is like we don't want to mess with it. But I think there's a willingness to very carefully introduce it into ways that would speed up to not even speed up the workflow, just make it easier so we can continue being creative.
Mm.
There's a lot of stuff that's just like I said, just getting folders to do certain things or like finding bugs and it just takes forever. And I'm like, if I could just have this done, it'd be a lot easier. But yeah, there's not too much talks about that. I would like it personally, and in my library, when I'm building my library, it'd be amazing if it could fill out my metadata for me. Like that just takes so long sometimes, and I only started adding metadata to my library like 2 or 3 years ago, and I've been developing it for like 5 or 6 years or something like that. So it's a lot of metadata to go through. I only just recently finished it like 4 or 5 months ago, adding all this like descriptive words to things and then the library it's in and what I use and all that. It takes forever. And it's like if I had something that could like give me a rough guess that I could just review, that'd be so nice. So
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
those are the things I would like to use it for.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, classification is definitely something that AI in audio would be super useful for.
Yeah.
What are you using in terms of a sample manager to even search for metadata like that?
I use SoundMiner.
SoundMiner, okay.
Yeah. So it's sort of like I always say it's like my worst enemy and my best friend. Like it's such a clunky app, and there's the way that things are worded and the way it's like laid out is really kind of confusing and whatever. But then once you sort of understand it and the weirdness that it has, then it's really useful. When I'm working on my library and building sounds and stuff, I don't even touch my DAW. Like I work just within SoundMiner, because you can like SoundMiner comes with a rack, an effects rack, so you can just like add all your effects in, and then you can test that effects chain on just like all kinds of different sounds. And if you like it, you just like render it. It goes to a folder. Go to another sound. Oh, it sounds cool but different. Render it, another one, and you can just pump out like 5 or 6 different versions of that, and then take that, and then if you buy like the pro version of SoundMiner, you get a sampler called Radium, and it's a 8-slot sampler, and it basically like you can throw like a string of impacts into it, and then it will find the transient, and then when you hit hit a button, it randomly selects a different variation. So it's sort of just like a very controlled, intentional version of S-Layer in a way.
Oh, yeah.
And so like you can kind of like build new sounds that way really quickly, and then again you hit record, play a bunch of those. Again, it goes to the same transfer folder, and then you can throw it back in your library, affect stuff, add stuff, continue to do that workflow.
Yeah, it seems like a solid workflow.
Yeah.
And I saw in your videos you were using Reaper, but you just completely turn the grid off. It just looks like a blank canvas, and you just throw sounds in there, no grid, nothing. It's like literally, I don't even see like the difference between tracks or anything. It literally just looks like a blank, completely blank surface. Is there a reason for that? You just prefer it that way? So
yeah, like I don't know. I was spending too much time trying to get things lined up perfect to a grid and stuff. I don't know, the like OCD in me wanted everything to be like on this perfect grid and stuff. And I was finding like, especially when we're working with linear media, it was just, it wouldn't make sense to have it on one frame or another. And I was like, I don't need this because I'm not making music. I don't need it to be to fit to a specific tempo, and I know of enough artists who don't even use the grid when they're making music. So it's like, I don't need this because I'm rendering out a file that's going to be implemented in a way that has no grid. It's functioning in the game that way. So it's like, yeah, I just didn't need it. And then I was like, oh, it's nice not having the grid. And then I was like, well, I'm gonna change the color of the tracks because in Reaper it's like light, dark, like dark, like every other track is a different color. So I change all the colors of the tracks to be the same color, and then there's also this tiny little line between each of them. There's like a spacer, so I changed the spacer lines to all of it, so it just was like a blank canvas. And I was like, there's something so like freeing about just having just a blank canvas. So then I took it another step further where I was like, well, I don't use track effects because in Reaper you can put effects on each individual item, each sound or MIDI item.
Mm.
So I'm like, well, I don't need that. So I took the tracks off, and then I was like, well, this is nice. Now I have all this space to work with, and I can see all my audio all the way across. And then I was like, well, I don't need all this stuff at the top, so I just got rid of that. And then I built like a toolbar, and then I have like the audio capture thing at the top, and I was like, this is nice. And then all the like I think it's called a transporter, the thing with like the play, pause, whatever. I put that on a different window, and I'll have like my history, actions history, and all that other stuff is over here for like monitoring the stereo and all that. And then over here I have like some other stuff, but my main, because I have 3 monitors, in my main monitor it's just like blank canvas, and I like that feeling of just having it like that. And also in Reaper, I was gonna experiment with it, but I felt like it was kind of risky. You can put multiple items in one track. Like you can expand a track and then like just have them literally floating around in a track. Like you don't need tracks at all. And I was considering just making one giant track, so I literally didn't have any tracks or any grid or anything. But I don't know if that would mess up like rendering, or I just didn't dive that deep into it. I was happy with the canvas thing I had already.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I like the idea for sure. I'd have to try it to see if it felt good. I imagine it does, because I've always come to that same issue as well when making things for film or for games or anything like that. It's like, yeah, you really don't need the grid. You just need the thing to fit the video or the whatever that you're like designing it for, which is completely ungridded, has tempo changes all through it and whatnot. It's just easier to just freehand it for sure.
There's certain things where you kind of need to know, like if you're making a sound for something in the game, the animations start at a certain time. So that's like, that would be like frame 0 or frame 1 or whatever, that frame 1 of the animation. So technically, like, you do have to start somewhere. But I find that like even that, I just have to trim up stuff a little bit if I need to have it start as soon as possible. You know, that's not really too much of an issue. But yeah, other than that, like, there's just no need for a grid or anything like that.
Yeah. I noticed another thing in the videos that you made. So for anyone listening, you've got like a couple of videos on your YouTube now of like how you make all of these sounds for these Overwatch characters, that you were doing a lot of like field recording with chimes and bells, and you went to the hardware store to get some like little thing that makes a little funk sound.
Yeah.
How often are you doing recording, and how often are you having to like go out or go to the hardware store to like find shit to make a sound that you're looking for?
Fairly often, because my library covers pretty much everything except for mechanical sounds and Foley, like cloth and like anything that's more like tactile in that way. But in terms of everything else, I kind of have it covered with my library for the most part. So like bell sounds, I have some synthesized bell sounds. It's not terribly hard to synthesize bell sounds. But sometimes I've kind of gotten to a place where I've been synthesizing all my stuff for so long that I'm kind of just like need something new. Like I've just been doing that thing for so long. And so recording bells is just, you know, it's nice to do. Like that singing bowl thing. It's interesting because I'd like recorded it and I'm like, oh, this sounds really nice and pleasant and it works for what I need it to. But then when you throw it in Isotope RX, it's like, oh, that's a sine wave. Like in the simplest form, it's just a sine wave. And what sort of makes it sound like a singing bowl is the friction sound. So then I'm like, well, I could probably synthesize that friction sound, but I just like what it is. And then my whole thing is like taking recordings and trying to make them sound almost synthetic. So like cleaning up as much as possible, because then they fit with my synthesized sounds like really well. But yeah, like mostly it's mechanical stuff and Foley. Like the staff, like I don't have that specific grab of a wooden staff sound in my library, so I'm just gonna
Mm,
go record it. Um, Sometimes it's real specific stuff like that that I need.
mm, right. What mics and preamps are you using mostly for this kind of stuff?
I use is it called Soundworks?
Sound devices?
Sound devices, yeah.
Yeah, those ones are really nice.
Yeah, it's great. I have one of the newer ones that does 32-bit recording, so it has like a
Hmm.
almost infinite headroom. It's really nice for like impacts and like things. You don't have to worry about it clipping. Um, I have a set of Sennheiser 8040s, 8020s. I don't know why it's slipping my mind right now, but they're for stereo. They're
Mm.
really nice. They have a nice like mid-low end presence to them, and they go up to like I think 60,000, 60K. So you get a little bit of the like supersonic stuff in there. And then I have a Sync CO 100K, which
That's the
goes
one
up
that,
to,
yeah,
yeah,
this thing is so cool, man. I've been wanting for so long to get one of those sound devices pre's in the Sanken
yeah,
100K. It's just like the most god tier setup, I feel like, for
yeah.
recording sounds.
The problem I
Because
have with, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, because like specifically you could record stuff at like 192K and record like some wildly high stuff like bats or birds or
Yeah,
something, and then you can pitch it all the way down and get like a whole new thing in there that you could not really get any other way.
it's crazy. Like we had to do a bunch of creature design stuff when I worked at Hexany, and we did stuff for a game called New World. That's Amazon, and then we did something for like a Silent Hill game at some point. I don't know which one it ended up being, but um, yeah, I spent a bunch of time with the Sync trying to figure out like how to record certain things, because you have to record things differently when you're pitching it down that much, because a lot of like specific sounds and textures will come out when you
Mm.
start stretching it and doing that process. But I was finding that like I was trying to make monster sounds, and I was like, oh, if I make monster sounds and then pitch it down, it's just going to sound like a deeper monster sound. But what I was finding is if I was using sort of distortion in my voice or like, phlegmy, throaty kind of sounds, when you pitch it down, it just ends up sounding really, that presence of it is just really more noticeable. And what I ended up finding was like just making very clean, dynamic movement sounds with my voice without a lot of like distortion or like breath or anything was the key, because once you pitch it down, it just starts sounding more like this deep vibrating sound
The
instead of
ruckles.
yeah, I'm trying not to use the word, but yeah, essentially the ruckles. But what I was finding was like, I think I accidentally recorded my voice at one point and it was pitched down. I'm like, why does that one part sound good and the rest is all kind of noisy? So then I pitched it back up and listened to it, and I was like, oh, I was just making a weird sound. I wasn't like, it was a goofy sound. That's weird that sounded better. So then I started making a bunch of that goofy sound and pitched it down. I was like, well, that's it. So I jokingly, it's like if you speak gibberish with Arnold Schwarzenegger's like if you're imitating Arnold Schwarzenegger speaking gibberish, that ended up being like the best sounding thing. I don't know. It's the throatiness and the manipulation of vowels and stuff like that. I don't know. That's just what I envisioned when I was recording it. But like, yeah. And then when you pitch it down, it just kind of like, it's perfect. It's clean. Yeah, I don't know. The syncing's crazy. Sometimes I just record stuff just to see what it sounds like pitched down 2 octaves, because there's so many upper frequencies that come through. But the problem I have with the syncing is that it's very clean, and it has a lot of, not clean, but it has a lot of highs, obviously. But it's an omni mic, so it picks up everything. So you need to be in a dead silent room if you're going to record anything. And then it doesn't have like the lows and the low mids that I like. And the Sennheiser 8040s, I think they're 8040s. they have like a really nice low mid to them, and that's why I pair them together, because it's like you get the best of both of them. And I usually just end up mixing them together. I don't have any phasing issues usually.
Mm.
Yeah, I just mix them together and kind of get the best of both worlds.
Mm. Yeah, makes sense. Are you still writing music? Are you doing any anemone stuff anymore, or
No,
have you kind of just doing sound design at this point?
it's been pretty strict focus on game sound design, but I've slowly started thinking about like wanting to do something and what I would do if I got into it. And it'd be interesting to take this library of weird textures and sounds and try to force them into a musical situation and see what comes out of it. I don't know. I thought about it. I would like to. I'm just so busy
Mm.
either working on my library or like I'm trying to do like some collaboration stuff here and there, and I'm trying to do redesigns. And it took me a while to make those videos. I have 3 videos up for my heroes now, and that took some time. And now there's like a bunch of sound designers are like, hey, talk about your session, talk about your workflow. So now I'm like, oh, well, I should probably make a video about how my workflow is set up and why I use the canvas style arrangement window and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think talking about like your sound miner workflow and your
Yeah,
radium workflow, like that kind of thing, would be interesting as well. I believe, and also like going more into depth on the mics and stuff like that.
yeah. I definitely plan on getting more into that stuff, and I want to do some synthesis stuff too, because like after I posted that his name's Wu Young, but the that one hero, the waterbending hero, people are like, oh, I want to know about the water synth stuff and whatever.
Mm.
So some of that like is tricky because it's so much layering and processing that it's like I think people are expecting it to be like one phase plant patch, and I'm like, it's definitely not. It's like 30 or 40 sounds layered over and over and over again, processed together. But it starts as synthesis. It just takes a lot to get there. So yeah, like showing some of that process and whatever would be fun too. But yeah,
Mm.
I don't know. Might get to music eventually.
Nice. Yeah, I hope you do, because the old music you used to make was really cool, and I bet it would be crazy now with like the amount of sounds that you have
Right.
laying around.
Yeah, I think there's also something too, like I've approached sound from one perspective for so long now that it's like I wonder if writing music with it, if I'd gain a new understanding of how it impacts sound, because now I'm thinking of it as like a kick with a bass sound, and how do I fill out those frequency ranges and stuff. Like, can I apply that to game, that back and forth. I feel like there'd probably something to learn from it as well. And that's kind of what I'm interested in. But I also just miss writing music, because it's like it's purely just like make sounds that feel and sound good together, and there's no other purpose for it. And
Mm.
there's something nice about that. There's nothing visual I have to design to, or it doesn't have to match up with something or feed some expectation. It's just like pure make cool thing. And
Mm.
that's interesting to me.
If
Oh
you
yeah.
did go back to music, would you do it under the anemone alias, or would you do it under just your name? Or
I don't know. I haven't thought too much about it. I might start something new, but it'd be kind of fun to go back and be like, oh, it's been 15 years or whatever. Like, I also thought it'd be fun to remake that sleep song, like now,
yeah,
just for
yeah, that would
fun.
be cool.
But
Just do like a 2026 sound design version of it.
yeah, right. Yeah. That'd be
Yeah, that
fun.
would be cool. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It was
Yeah.
great to catch up. And where can people find you?
YouTube is probably the best place. Just my name, Nicholas Yochum. I have people hit me up on Discord, Instagram, sometimes LinkedIn. Well, there's a pretty decent sound design community on LinkedIn now.
Mm.
But yeah, just message me to wherever. I'm pretty open to chatting whenever.
Awesome. All right, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.